Hi, this is Tim Hamilton and
John Frenay.
And we're the co-hosts of the Maryland Crabs.
Today, we're here with a crab cake for your listening pleasure. What's a crab cake? It's not quite a full episode. It's just a little snippet. So stay tuned and check it out.
And make sure you check us out on themarylandcrabs.com. You can follow us on Twitter at MD Crabs Podcast or find us on Facebook at the Maryland Crabs Podcast. Don't forget, subscribe, rate us, iTunes. Go there now. Go. It's the Maryland Crabs. We're doing the Film Festival edition, right?
Yep.
We're all geared up for the film festival, all excited. This is my partner, John, is collapsing exhaustion from the film festival. So I got the fun one. So I'm here with Bayard Outerbridge, right? I'm always terrified of mispronouncing names, right? Look at that. You didn't glare at me.
Nailed it.
If John was here, he'd glare at me. And my old friend, Cheryl Sterlakis. We go a long way.
Could you spell that?
Yes, I can. Cheryl. Thought you had me, didn't you?
Okay, I'll give you that.
And Deborah Fortier. I did even the French accent on that.
Yes.
That's French. Cheryl and Deborah are both the executive producers, while Bayard is the producer. So the director is en route. He'll be here tomorrow. By the time you hear this, it'll be today. So we are talking about Aleppo. That is a film that you just came off the Bermuda Film Festival with that, right?
We did. That was our first festival, and this is our U.S. premiere here at Annapolis.
And you're from Bermuda. That just fascinates me.
Yeah, so it was a hometown crowd. It was pretty exciting.
He's here wearing the shorts and everything and the big hat. And
the pink knee-high socks.
Yeah, right. I don't wear those out of the country. I did that once. I made that mistake once.
Yeah, it's a look, definitely. You could pull it off, though. But so the movie Aleppo, it's a little light film, obviously. It was...
light comedy.
I watched the previews because it came out 3 days ago, right? The 17th?
The 16th, actually.
16th.
The 16th, that it had its international premiere.
And it's a short film. It's about 25 minutes around there, or...
20 minutes and a couple of seconds, I think, with credits.
And it was powerful, what I saw. It was extremely timely. What I gleaned from that, and what I gleaned from the interviews that we had with the director, was that they were just trying to put a face to something that most people don't understand right now. I thought of it it reminded me the whole situation in Syria right now of like Rwanda in 1993 and maybe the breakup of Yugoslavia in 94, and even like the Uyghur situation right now in China, where it's something that's not getting a lot of press because people are kind of numb to it, but the carnage is just spectacular.
Exactly. And that's what we felt coming into it, and why the director first came to me and wanted to do this project was nobody was paying attention to it. And I think when there's something like this happening that people feel powerless to do anything to help, that they just kind of want to block it out. And it's not very helpful for the people that are dealing with it, for the refugees that are having to flee the country. And we just felt that it was something we really needed to put attention towards in a creative and interesting way that could portray, someone going through this and show the common humanity.
So you're putting a face to it. This is something that you look at.
That's a good way to put it.
You look at the statistics, and it's staggering. This is, I think, the largest refugee movement since World War II, something like that, if I'm correct.
It's pretty massive. It's pretty massive. And also, specifically, our protagonist is a doctor, and doctors have been targeted.
Because this is not, I should point out right now, this isn't a documentary. That's why he's talking about the protagonist.
It's not a documentary, and it's not focused on the refugees so much. The focus is elsewhere.
Right.
I think that adds a lot because it makes it somewhat unique. Many have focused on the victims and not as much on the people who are trying to help, the medical professionals who are offering aid.
Who elect to be there when they could be stateside in a cushy office.
And they're being targeted
too. It's
not just that they're being killed, but they are being schools and hospitals are actually being targeted by all 9 sides, whoever is fighting. Even the white hats, the famous white helmets.
Right.
They're the volunteers who are essentially the medics who are pulling people out of the wreckage, and they're being targeted as well.
I think that's one of the most shocking things. If people really understand that these people are targeted, they've killed many doctors and many healthcare workers. And I think most civilized people would find that shocking.
But it's something that's kind of gone into the background. We're concentrating on so many domestic issues, and Syria's been a part of that. But I think most people just they don't understand what's going on, and it's very complex. But I think what you chose to do was, again, put a face to it. And that's a young doctor who's a Syrian-American who goes back to Syria to help the people who are getting caught up in the fighting.
Exactly. We wanted to tell a specific story that people could relate to, and and tell some sort of character arc and show what these heroes do. I mean, we met and interviewed a lot of the actual doctors that have been there, and it's staggering to hear that they get a phone call the night before saying that there's more help that's needed, and they're immediately making travel plans to go because they feel compelled to do it. And so when I mentioned this project to Cheryl and Debbie, they immediately wanted to do something to help and come on board. And I think you two had worked together on a couple of other projects before that were related to this topic or to the topic of doctors.
Our film Lady Ganga, Nilsa's story that we shot in India. I reached out to Debbie during our funding campaign. We did a Kickstarter campaign, and she jumped on immediately, seeing the importance and the impact that this film could have. And then I roped her in to another film that's a Iranian foreign language, U.S. produced horror film.
Right. There's so many of those, though. I just feel like if I see another U.S. produced Iranian horror film, I mean, the Farsi and the Persians, I just, it's funny. I always like to bring it back to me. A kid I grew up with, he lived across the street from me growing up, and I grew up in Montgomery County, Bethesda, and his name was Roy Lee. And Roy Lee, his parents were Korean, and his parents were doctors, and his specialty was importing Japanese and other Asian horror films and then redoing them here. So he did The Ring and The Grudge, and
wow,
that was his job.
Wow,
what a good idea!
Yeah, I know. And it's an homage. It's not cultural appropriation because there's nothing cultural about it. So
you know what, Tim Hamilton, I forgot how funny you are, and I
mentioned that in the email.
I mentioned that in the email.
So the character is interesting. So it's a young female doctor in her 30s, and I think you could have gone with the entire plot of just the humanity and putting a face to it, but you kind of took it a step further. That it's not a simple story. It's first of all, I think I saw in the clip that the whole thing is a paradigm and represents what's happening in Syria, how the rest of the world's kind of ignoring it.
Correct. Yeah. We so the director also, I have to give full credit to him for this, but he came across this condition called face blindness, otherwise known as prosopagnose, where you can't distinguish people's faces, whether it's people closest to you or, even your spouse.
Do you know who has that?
Who has that?
Keanu Reeves.
Does he really?
Little trivia.
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Do you have his number?
I do.
We'll talk later.
He won't remember me, though, because he won't remember my face.
He'll have no idea who you are.
He said, "Do you know Tim?" And he'll go, "No, I don't know that guy." I'll say, "He's got face blindness."
Do you know if it came from an injury?
I don't know.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, or he's just making an excuse for the fact he doesn't know people. I would love to say that.
Could be that.
That's a good.
But you can be born with it, and there are a lot of people that it's a whole spectrum. You can either have just a little bit of facial recognition issues, or the full spectrum where you can't distinguish between objects even. And there was a fascinating article in the New Yorker called "The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat."
I read that.
And, yeah.
That's a fabulous book.
Yeah,
it's a series, I think, of stories about neurological issues. But that was, I think that was the one that the director read, and so we were brainstorming these ideas, and he posited the idea that maybe this would be an interesting metaphor for our character. And Syria can't even recognize itself right now. I mean, it's been devastated, and people that are from there, our character is a Syrian-American now living back in America as a successful doctor and decides to go back to help. And she's having trouble after she survives an explosion and suffers head trauma that gives her this condition, is having trouble figuring out her identity and where she fits in this world. And it just became a perfect metaphor to layer the film with.
That's a metaphor for what's happening over there. Also a metaphor for being American, I think. We talked about that with like the Dreamers, that they don't fit in at home. They don't fit in here. And when they get older, right now they're teenagers, but they're not going to have an idea where they belong, especially now. It's timely when we talk about immigration and illegal immigration and just and the rise of white nationalism is what it means to be an American. So, I mean, it's a metaphor for the way we look at Syria and the way we treat immigrants who are in this country. So what got you interested in this in the first place? I mean, this is a story, like if you're coming up with ideas, you're going, okay, let's talk about Syria. That's something that obviously it's faded kind of in the background. It's always there, but it's...
Yeah, I always organically just sort of come into projects and it's usually brainstorming ideas with other creative people that I think are really talented and that I want to work with. And that's sort of how it came about. But I also have found that most of the films that I've worked on have something to do with identity. And I'm attracted to, for some reason, films that speak to different cultures and our common
like cultural identity or... Cultural
identity, I think... also, anything to do with, borders. For instance, I did another short film called Maxam about an Israeli soldier who wanted to be a pacifist, and he takes in a Palestinian boy stranded after curfew. And, clashing cultures, I think, are really interesting to me, and people that live between different cultures. So a story about a Syrian-American who's both an American and has a very strong Syrian cultural identity as well was just something that naturally attracted to me. If you'd asked me why I was doing it at the time, I wouldn't have known that. But yeah, it just seems to those seem to be the projects that I end up doing.
When you talk about national identity, especially in the Middle East, it's such a razor thin line because most people see, the Jews and the Arabs, and it's not nearly that simple. The Kurds and the Persians, at least two different kinds of Islam. As we record this today, the president announced that he was going to recognize the Israeli dominance over the Golan Heights, which, agree or not, every little thing that you do, it's like you have a pile of stones and every little pebble you move, the whole thing tumbles. And it's been like this since World War II when just random lines were drawn on a map. And people say they've been fighting for centuries. They haven't. This is because we don't recognize identity. What it means to be a Kurd, what it means to be a Palestinian.
Right.
Or, so all of a sudden you have all these people are crunched together and they're separated by lines that they've only existed for 100 years.
Right. Yeah. Arbitrary borders. And, I guess you could also say it whittles down to powerful people trying to just get as much control over the population as possible at any cost.
So who wrote this?
So we brought in two writers. The director and I both went to the American Film Institute together. So we went back to recent graduates and from the American Film Institute, and we actually asked the faculty who some of the strongest writers were coming out that year.
So they're young.
Very young. Quite young, I guess in their mid-20s.
I'm in my mid-20s.
Yeah. Oh, good.
Yeah.
There you go.
I'm 29.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. I'm only a few years older than them. But yeah, and we found someone who was very talented to write about 12 drafts. And then she got, Brennan Peters is her name, very talented writer. She then got signed by an agency and got too busy. So we went back to the pool again and found...
I thought you meant because of it. I'm like, good. Yeah. And he said, and she didn't write it. Oh.
Yeah. No, she did. A lot of what she wrote in those first 12 drafts remain and are really the core of the story. And so we brought on this other writer who just embellished from there, Morris Long, and the rest is history. I think it took us about 26 drafts to get there with lots of feedback and trying to rein it in to a workable budget as well. I think at one point we had a $200,000 short film on our hands, which was a little unrealistic.
Where did you shoot it, by the way?
We shot in Brooklyn and entirely in Brooklyn, mostly in a hospital in Brownsville, Brooklyn, which was donated. We had a whole wing and the basement morgue donated to us.
Wow.
And we were able to shoot all the serious scenes in a working basement morgue, which had its own challenges.
I know that most feature-length films, that's 29 days around there for shooting. How long did it take you guys?
We were a 6-day shoot, and we went back for 1 day of reshoots as well, so 7 altogether.
Spielberg and Jaws, we're missing that one scene.
Yeah, that's exactly how it always is.
Yeah, I mean, we were always sort of taught to budget for reshoots, and so we sort of analyze things and figure out where we can embellish. If we can avoid it, of course, as a producer especially, I think we all try and not have it, but in the back of our minds, we know it might happen.
So how did Cheryl and Deborah get involved?
I was very interested in the project when I heard about it. And part of the appeal was the fact that this story is being told about the caregivers. We've seen a lot that has been shown on screen and in the news about the victims, but not as much about what the people who've decided to dedicate their time to have suffered in this. And as we said earlier, many have been killed. Many have been injured, and they have been targeted. So this is a part of the story that I think there has not been enough priority on, attention on. So I thought that this would be an important message to get out.
So I met Bayard at the Bermuda International Film Festival about 4 years ago, maybe.
About that. Yeah.
And we stayed in touch, I guess. Is that how?
I think that's it. That is. Yeah. I was moderating a panel on short films, and Lady Ganga was one of the short films, and we met during that panel.
Right.
And then I think there was a gap because I went back to LA, and it was about a year and a half, maybe a year and a half, 2 years later that we were starting to develop this, excuse me.
Right. And we crossed paths again. I think you contacted me because we have a U.S. nonprofit called Global Film Fund, and we provide fiscal sponsorship to not only film projects, but other projects that have some sort of impact on the world. And when we were doing 2 documentaries on HPV, we raised the money, one through a Kickstarter campaign that we did for our film Lady Ganga. And we thought after we did this, if we had had a nonprofit to run the film through, we could have raised even more money. Yeah. And so that's when we decided, my husband and the director, Frederick Lumiere, who I have done 2 documentaries with, we decided to spend the money, hire an attorney, and launch a 501c3. So we have Global Film Fund, and I think we have 8 projects so far. And I could have many more. I have 5 films coming out this year, and I haven't had time to really give it my time that I need to bring up more film projects.
I just got to get my receipts ready for my taxes. I haven't even done that yet. That's the only thing I have to do this year. You have 5 films coming out.
So, we ran Aleppo through our nonprofit.
But there was a Kickstarter campaign involved in that.
They started with a Kickstarter campaign.
That was the start, and it was actually...
And I think I donated to that.
Yeah, you definitely did.
And that's how we got Global Film Fund, yeah.
That was it. You caught it and donated, and then we got to talking.
Yeah, we've had like 1,000 conversations, Bayard and I, so it's hard to remember how we got started.
Yeah,
it has to open up a lot of opportunities for independent filmmakers these days with the crowdfunding. I always read the story about when Spike Lee did She's Gotta Have It, and he did that for $200,000 back in like 88, 89. And I just remember the story about him going to all his friends and family and parents, convincing them to max out their credit cards and to mortgage their houses and stuff. And there's nothing I'm that confident about that I would try to convince all my friends and relatives to max out credit. I wouldn't even want them to max out their library cards, let alone credit cards.
For my thesis film in grad school, went the friends and family route. So I had already tapped them all out.
I'm still going that route.
Do they avoid you at Christmas?
Yeah.
You're like walking up with your eggnog and they're just smiling and walking away.
I'm still going that route. Right. This is 40A.
Yeah.
Cheryl's very persuasive.
I know. We've got 3 films together that we've worked on, so I'm aware.
You keep feeding her, she's going to keep coming back. It's just... She's like a dog with a bone sometimes.
I know. She has garlic on her front door, thinking that might keep me out.
But it's amazing the stories that you can tell. I mean, this was when Cheryl called me and Aleppo. I mean, I knew right away, Aleppo. I'm like, it's not going to be a comedy. But I expected it to be a documentary. And I got to imagine that it's very hard to capture the pathos and the pain and the tragedy all in such a short time period, less than a sitcom is.
It is like a little mini feature film. It has a beginning, middle, and end. And we're using the film right now to put together a feature-length project. So
same topic?
Yeah, expanding on that story because there are so many elements to the story that could be expanded.
I smell Amazon Prime series. I'm just saying. You saw what they did with Sharp Objects. That was a powerful 6-series arc.
I think you hit the nail on the head because...
Oh, you just went off the hook.
Yeah.
Because it is difficult to tell a complex story like that in 20 minutes. And when we look at the dynamics and the way the film evolves, there's so much more to say that it does need to be a full-length film.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we went back and forth on earlier drafts of the script. There's not only budgetary things, but, you know, it was just too much to tell. We had a husband character. We had, you know, more backstory, and you have to figure out.
That's a lot of complexity that you're cutting out.
Completely.
Yeah.
And
Just
it
recently
did change
saw the husband character pop up. Who's he?
Yeah, who's that guy? We'll find out. But, you know, I think we did a pretty good job of, and we could have done it shorter because, but in order to have an arc for the short film and have it actually still be a standalone piece and not just, you know, a teaser or some kind of moment that happens, we felt that we needed that 20 minutes to be able to tell that. You know, we couldn't do it in any less, even though a lot of festivals do tend to prefer films that are 15 minutes or less. And we knew we were sacrificing some of our potential festival interest, but we, you know, a really strong story is obviously ultimately more important and is going to get more traction in the long run. So
now you're jumping from festival to festival now? You just came off Bermuda?
Just came off Bermuda. We have you know, we've applied to many, as you do. I haven't even announced this yet, but I guess you might be the first to hear that we have just been accepted into the Newport Beach Film Festival.
Oh, congratulations.
In April. So we're gonna hop on over there after this one.
That's fantastic. So the film festival started today. Today's Friday. We're recording. You'll hear this on Saturday. What opportunity do you get to see the film during the film festival?
Sunday at 12:30. But you need to buy your tickets as soon as possible.
Especially because some of the med techs that were working with us in the hospital, we've just heard, have booked a Sprinter van, and 20 of them, including a Syrian doctor.
Oh, wow.
Are actually, and he was our cultural advisor as well, are driving down here the morning of Sunday for the screening and then driving back to New York.
That's awesome.
I hope they wear their lab coats. That would be like really cute.
Yeah, make a special request.
We need to have Aleppo, the movie, or the film, embroidered on
I'll
their
send a
lab
text.
coats.
The Annapolis Film Festival's gotten just bigger and bigger every year. I remember about 4 years ago, just when it first kind of landed on my radar, it was just this small, quaint little film festival. Now it's just absolutely exploding right now. It's fantastic.
Yeah, they've got great filmmakers that have come in. I went to their documentary panel today, and they had some great leaders in the film industry that were on the panel, and it's great.
So you have to go to the Annapolis Film Festival website and buy your tickets ahead of time because it sounds like it's going to be packed.
Yep.
And with the surprise guest that we just unsurprised.
Yes.
Well, I can't wait to see it. I mean, it was riveting. Aleppo the movie. It's aleppothemovie.com, I believe.
Aleppothefilm.org.
Yes, I was way off. I got Aleppo right. But there's a preview on there and an interview with the director that was just fascinating. So I encourage you to go take a look at that. But good luck with the film festival and the future film festival.
Like us on Facebook.
Yeah, check us out. We're on
Follow
Instagram,
us.
Twitter.
Yes.
What are you on Twitter?
Aleppo the Film.
I quit Twitter.
Aleppo the Film is usually our handle.
I had to.
Any reason why?
Yes, because I was like angry all the time instead of being charming like I usually am and adorable.
I hate that.
We can tell that.
Yeah. I was just always stressed storming around the house, and my kid's like, "Why don't you quit Twitter?"
Just look at pictures on Instagram.
Yeah, I know.
I also
off the TV for the
am
same reason.
Executive producer of another film, Four Corners, that is screening at the same time Aleppo is in the same block.
So you're going up against yourself.
Well, it's not. I don't think this is a competition for shorts. I don't know.
Give us an award.
Well, I get twice the chance to win.
Film Festival, you don't have tickets yet, go to the Film Festival website and get your tickets and follow everybody on Twitter. So you got Bayard, Deborah, and Cheryl. I want to thank you for joining me, although I'm joining you. And good luck. This is going to be a fascinating film. So well done.
Thank you, Tim.
Really appreciate it.